We are live.
Excellent. Hello, world. This is the Nijez Temple, and as usual, we're doing our Enlightenment Salon conversation. Today, I'm going to have Bruno bring forward a topic for us to discuss, one that he's interested in. It actually brings a very high-level conversation, and we'll all just kind of jam with it. All right, so introductions, and I'll hand it to Bruno. I am Nige Coach.
I'm Nige Mitchell.
I'm Najee Ben.
This is Naji Glenn.
Nijai Sorglo.
Nijai Bruno.
All right, Bruno, go ahead and bring us in.
So I was thinking for tonight we would talk about the notion of VI and how it sort of plays into general creative fields, but even more generally Nai and Ni and the way that they operate in the world. Maybe more in particular even Nai. So the context in which I'm thinking of this is in terms of the 20th century recent use of copyright laws and how they've sort of been abused, according to many people's standards, by the record industry or whatever it is that you want to call it. You know, the system. In terms of like a really common thing in the 20th century has been to bring in young, disadvantaged artists and sort of give them a little bit of seed funding, give them a little bit of support, and then they have some good ideas. Then the company takes ownership of that, and the artist is basically left with nothing. They have to tour constantly if they want to make any of. They basically have no way to like make a living other than like continuously pump out ideas and tour for the company, and the company basically takes ownership of that. And you might say, well, that's reasonable given the investment, but it's a little bit difficult when you see artists who are extremely creative, very well liked by the public, and very effective, but they can barely squeak by. Many they're in debt or the kind of stories that you see on like VH1, for example, like Where Are They Now? Like they may have one or two successful songs, but because they can't pump out the same exact thing every time, which for Nai and Ni is very difficult. In fact, it goes against what Nai and Ni are about. Like the demands of the market are for stability and repeated success, whereas the demands of Nai and Ni are for moving forward at faster and faster, at bigger and bigger steps. And so reconciling the two is like a gigantic task, and only really a very few people have managed to remain creative and
It's
also
all very,
remain
very
successful.
interesting, Bruno, and I think I'm tracking it so far. I'd like to contribute to the conversation at some point. I just wanted to know, is there something that you want us to kind of take away from what you're saying here, as far as like to set the conversation? What is it you want us to kind of, if you're setting the scene here for us, what I think I'm tracking is.
Okay, so
I guess what is the discussion item?
yeah, so let me take it even further back than to 20th century. So, but to get an even bigger picture, before all of this stuff with copyright laws and the Industrial Revolution and modern civilization in the 20th century, what we sort of had was a sort of a budding industry, and literature, for example, the printing press. That's only been around for about 500 years, like the Gutenberg printing press. Before that, everything had to be copied by hand. So it didn't really make sense to have copyrights on ideas because it took so long for ideas to travel. You had to have a bunch of monks sitting there copying books by hand before it could reach a mass audience. And so because of that, copyright wasn't really a thing, and people just borrowed ideas from each other very freely. And Ni in particular, for example, thrived in this setting. Like I mentioned many times, Shakespeare, for example, was an artist who basically lived off of Ni. We don't know what he was, but a sort of cross-contextualizing. He would just basically take from here, take from there.
I think Starglow put a thing in here which I think it might be useful. Are you? Is the question we're doing what is the honorable treatment of creative product?
Yeah, that's a part of it. The honorable treatment
like Vi's role in that.
and the person who creates the product, absolutely. But even more than that, that falls within my concern, which is a concern of the way Vi can block into Nye and me as well. They can sort of take ownership,
Hmm.
and it does that by through the methods you're talking about, poverty wages, sort of maintaining. Vi has ownership of routine, and they can and institutional institutions, so they can abuse that and sort of take over the Nye, and poverty wages and abusive treatment is one of the ways that they do it, but there's many more. For example, the copyright laws that I'm talking about. That's
Right. This is good, but you're kind of giving us a lot of meat in the very beginning for the person who's setting it. We kind of need to know what it is that we're talking about, because this is really good backstory.
It's about Vi like inappropriately taking ownership of Nez powers.
Okay, like I said, we don't want to go just
Instead of-
side. So I guess how Vi takes ownership.
Right. Yeah, instead of like playing with Nye and Vi, like having an interplay.
So
it's
so I think then maybe a good discussion then would be Vi and ownership. Vi is closely associated with the concept of ownership and permanence in that way. Is ownership good? In what way is it good? In what way is it bad? What's appropriate ownership and what's inappropriate? Because natural law made Vi. Vi is strongly associated with ownership. And then, can you own an idea? So I guess that's Vi and ownership. Is that a good?
Yes.
Okay, so Vi and ownership and how it applies to anything. Bruno particularly is interested in how it applies to its modulation stuff, the interpretive powers. But I really think to get it properly, we talk about how Vi owns ritual, how Vi owns methodology. Vi it owns. It's what it does. So okay, that's very very good. Thank you, Bruno. Is there anything more you want to say then? Because that gives my brain something kind of to focus on and to contextualize what I'm saying. Anything you want to say before you kind of stimulate the panel?
Throw a little bit of structure for the guy.
Sorry, but yeah, no, that's totally it. That's basically it.
Okay. Is there like a starting kind of question you want to put to the panel to get us going on that?
Sure. How about how is technology and the internet going to change that, and how has it enabled us to sort of transcend that kind of Vi limitation? Where's it going to go? How can we get there better and faster?
Bruno, yeah, okay, cool. Ben's going, but Bruno, if no one jumps in when you give these prompts, you start picking on people.
Okay.
It seems that there's an issue of perhaps putting the wrong responsibilities on the wrong people, like putting someone else's wealth, the way that it's required to flow. Taking it from people that perhaps it shouldn't be taken from, in such a way that it's not very efficient for the system. For example, with copyright law, if it's say with the internet, it's made things significantly easier to share and download and distribute music. So it fundamentally takes less resources in order to do so. But there is also the need of music artists to be paid, for their work, because they put a lot of work into that music. So there's a question of where should the funding be coming from? Should everyone be required to pay for each individual song? How much should that be? What's reasonable there? Should it for the most part come from ad revenue? Should people be required to sit through advertisements? What exactly from the user should be required to input to finance that? So I think a lot of it comes down to who should own what resources, and where should they be sent? And that's interesting because that's a very bi thing. Like everyone has like a a total amount of wealth they own, and there's always a certain amount of known value attributed to something in general. So it's interesting. I think the Vi and Z kind of go hand in hand with that because we are talking about laws and regulations and the flow of income and things like that. When we're talking about like copyright law and what that should be and how that should work.
I had a thought about this. I actually have looked into this quite a bit. One of my favorite authors is Nijai Cory Doctorow, and he has this very interesting concept of open intellectual rights on copyright.
Mm-hmm.
He believes that he believes in a liberal free sharing of digital media, and has advocated file sharing. But he argues that copyright holders should have a monopoly on selling their own digital media, and that copyright laws should only be operative when that author or musician attempts to sell the product. He started out his authorship by releasing his books free in digital PDF format. And he's actually written quite a few books on the topic that are fictionalized. His thoughts on this would leave out the entire conglomerate business, the big monopoly business that currently exists for like publishing houses and media houses and music record contracts and that kind of thing. That would his idea is to leave that entirely out, to get rid of it as part of the whole system, his concept of his whole Z system. And I find that I agree with that to a major extent in what I know of it.
Interesting. So he's advocating that the copyright owners should be selling their own media, their own music, and
there should be no label. There should be no middleman, kind of thing.
Right. That with the way the internet is, if you release and promote, it's your work. Like I said, he originally released many of his books in the beginning as full free PDF ebooks. They became very, very popular, and popular enough that a publishing house agreed to take, and this is back before ebooks were even that big, because this is the 90s when he started releasing his books. They agreed to do a publishing hard copy of his books based on a percentage of sales. That's the deal he worked. So it wasn't even about, at least that's my understanding. I could be wrong on the specifics. But, and he continues to sell his ebooks personally himself.
And through the publishing house as well.
And through the publishing house, but the publishing house has a different deal with him. They don't pay him. They get a percentage of their, buyback on the books. Sort of like for publishing them in the first place.
So that sounds like a really good way to do it, and that shows
I agree. That seems
progression of how far we've come, where you can do things over the internet now, where it's possible to have yourself be the get 100% of the funding as far as like what you get for the work that you did, but there's also options available as far as like how things have been done before, and those are still like people may want to get like a hard copy book, like some people like that. So there's options available, and there's a new option available of like selling things through the internet, and people do that, and I think people do that in a lot of different ways with a lot of different things. So that's awesome. That shows like
that seems really beneficial to what Bruno mentioned about, like, artists not getting paid enough. I think that's really important.
Yeah,
Up front, they're given kind of like a fair rate, that can be established, and it's not like something that changes over time because now they own it, So.
Yeah, so Bruno, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not as up on the music industry as I am on publishing, but in the music industry, my understanding is that basically you write a contract and the musician gets a tiny, like 1% of the profit. Cory Doctorow has flipped that to where the publisher gets a certain percentage, and it's a decent actual percentage from my understanding. It's bigger than 1%, which is what music record labels give to music artists, but they're the one that get the percent off of it, and he owns the bulk. He owns the work.
Yeah, the actual.
I think this is all very interesting. I think it actually sounds like it's got a lot of, I think, just good sense to it. I think a reason why it does this closer to something that I think needs to be focused on, which is something we do a lot with Podlair. It's kind of our special gift to the world, is being able to see the human condition at a higher, longer level than other people are. And so one thing I try to do a lot is imagine, what has Vi been doing all these years before human civilization got here that was correct, that natural law chose, like, yes, that's Vi doing Vi correctly, and that happened over and over and over and over again for such a long period. I try to figure out what is that, because we can tap into that, we could apply it to these situations. And like the situation you just mentioned, it sounds like they're doing a better job because they're closer to it, that Vi being done right. You know what I mean? And we make that like the kind of like the divining rod, we would be good to go. Because otherwise, this here sounds really good, but it's being done instinctually, and it doesn't have a way to say the world. This is closer to how natural law wants it. Some kind of like authority to it. Otherwise, authority tends to go to nationalism or banks generally.
I think what maybe like what that could be is like what Vi has been doing, like the proper way. The reason why we like, we think that that's more fair is because it rewards the peak pathway, I think, more properly, right, for the effort that's been done by the individual and all the other people that are also involved in that. And so that is being respected more, and that's why it seems like the more better answer to go in that direction. So people's peak pathways are being acknowledged and rewarded appropriately, I think. More better than the previous method. And that's why it's more just overall better.
That's a great barometer for whether or not we are doing what is supposed to be done correctly, is that the peak pathways, more peak pathways will be honored at a higher level. That's exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Glenn. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for all of its problems, the U.S. could be a good example of how Vi has been done in a different way, at least, than most of the world. Coming from Brazil, for example, people here in the U.S. talk about like corruption and things like that in the government, but if you go to like a third world country like Brazil or India or China or whatever, it's a totally different game as far as like corruption and Vi and the abuse of the system. I mean, there corruption is completely out in the open, and it's a totally well-known, accepted fact. And whereas here in the U.S., at least there's more. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but it's just
it's done, but it's not accepted.
It's not.
I don't think you can separate these three things, which is the individual instance, which in this case is corruption, with journalism. How much that culture allows transparency and inclusiveness in their journalism.
That's a good point, yeah.
Because, for example, I mean, there's some things obviously an issue because they don't allow them to be seen. And then the third one is your narrative. the heroic narrative that a culture ascribes to, people are going to interpret the act of corruption differently based on what kind of like heroic narratives they're used to.
And I think that's actually a big problem with what's going on now in the U.S. is the repeal of the Fairness Doctrine and the monopolies that we currently have that allow for the monopolistic control of journalism. I think you're absolutely right, Coach. I think that journalism being the third, the fourth estate makes by it upholds by to a higher standard.
And in particular, VIG are at the forefront of this type of journalism, and it's interesting because
Politicians.
yeah, because we're also talking about like the negative and the positive sides. And so on the industry, the music industry, for example, most of the people that do that kind of ownership thing, and they do a lot of noble shepherding as well. They bring up a lot of artists and they raise them up. But many of the people that do take that ownership kind of thing are VIG. But on the flip side, many of the journalists and people that work to expose and get things on record, put things on the record, are noble VIG. And I'm not saying that obviously there are VIG journalists who need to work on their code of conduct and entrepreneurs who are doing very high level shiny baby stuff. But it's just as a general way
this gets into the cultural narrative combined because a lot of journalisms are known for, even in the U.S., are known for being bought by corporations.
Absolutely.
That's a big issue. However, why is it better than these other countries? I think probably it's the cultural narrative that started, which is the public expected to be told what's going on.
Right to know.
Yeah.
And so right to know is just kind of built into the cultural narrative expectations. And so even though a lot of companies don't want to, they know if they don't do that, they'll be called on. So they have to at least put something out in that direction or they'll be in trouble.
Yeah, one thing is kind of tangentially related is like, I think McDonald's or something. It's a fast food kind of thing, and then there was a movie that was made pointing out that this fast food joint is like really not healthy or something. And then McDonald's, in order to show more transparency, they started showing like all the different foods and all the different
I did.
stuff that is
notice
made out
that. I
of why
caught
it
that
is.
too, Glenn.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just and
When
it
people, like someone brings up that this is like a huge problem, then like everyone becomes aware of it, and then then the public is like upset about it. So then they change the way they do things. They start delivering more information. They're being more transparent. They're
exactly.
and that's doing good by.
Yeah. So they adapted in the proper way.
With the right to know, the VI heroic part of that is the right to know. I think, Coach, that narrative. I think you're absolutely right, Coach. That narrative means a lot. That storyline running through the whole thing means a lot. Even as corporations are buying up and monopolizing our news and using propaganda and all of that in a very villainous way. That we
Right, that's not how VI is evolved to be. But I think what has happened, and I've mentioned this many times before, about how civilization has kind of made these demons or these addictions that are very challenging for people. Like for example, if you are have Z in your hierarchy at all, institutional advantages, they're just so strong. The amount of resource, like you can work on a Hadron Collider or not. Like, I mean, that's like, whoa, I mean, that's very, very tempting. Not just Z, but I mean, these kind of things, they appeal to certain powers, and it can be inappropriate. It's very hard to resist it. And then what happens is, VI is about control, a big part, and reliability. And it should be control of peak pathways, reliability in good peaking. But at some point, it became keeping this family or this corporation in power. That's what must be controlled. That I must reliably give the shareholders what they need.
Yeah, I mean, VI is meant to serve the greater peak pathways, like the peak pathways of the public, not to dominate and like put them where they shouldn't be.
And a catchphrase on that I think would be good is peak pathways are the true and only bottom line. But VI, most places in the world, nationalism or bank balances or something is established as the most
Right.
important thing.
Money is
Yeah,
God.
yeah. Money is meant to make things easier for us, not to make us
That's
Take over.
greedy bastards.
Not to, have,
Productivity people.
not to have most people have their peak pathways really constricted horribly.
Mhm.
It's meant to, and I think, concepts in money makes sense. Like, okay, people should be incentivized, but it shouldn't, you have to know how to, set that. You can't have people, the greed of people like take over everything and be like, oh, at top 1% get like this huge amount of money,
Exactly. Yeah.
It needs to be properly balanced. The resources need to be properly allocated. You can't have anyone have too much power or too many resources.
Right, because natural law, it supports accumulating good stuff and holding on to good stuff and transferring it from one to another and keeping it whole. Those are positives of Vi. But it starts to get to where it's just doing it for its own thing. No one really even knows why it's being done anymore. And so natural law does not support
Hoarding.
a few people getting their peak pathway rocks off, and even they aren't really peaking like they're supposed to be, and the rest of people just are disadvantaged. That means that the species, I mean, if you look at natural law's point of view, that species is disadvantaging itself.
Any gathering taken to an extreme of hoarding is unhealthy.
Yeah, I agree.
The way I see it's like one is like getting a fix on something and not really getting what they need out of it. They've kind of like made it into some kind of unhealthy thing, and the other group is in some kind of they're being denied certain things that they need, and they're kind of deficient in those things that they need.
Consider a healthy Vijay connection. The V gathers the material goods and the Vi controls them. But at any point that the gathering becomes so unhealthy to be hoarding, then it creates, because Vi is the material portion of the world, it creates problems where everybody else's peak pathway the entire way down the line.
Well, this gets into the thing that Vi has to watch out for. Its strength is its specificity, but its weakness is its specificity. And so Vi, if it's being done correctly, should be about productive harmony on a species-wide scale. If you do it, that's like, what's the Vi, the standards of excellence for tending to the ecology? You know what I mean? Or tending to natural resources. If you come from the point of view of a company or a nation, you're going to get it wrong. You have to look at it at the global resources, the species-wide resources. As soon as the Vi, that's what Vi likes to do, divides it up by French and the Japanese, or that is my company. So pretty much, if I just take everything out of the ground, so my company makes lots of money, the fact that it pretty much screwed the pooch for the rest of the species in that regard, do you mean the true Vi of natural law doesn't support that, because that actually cripples a species? It has a small portion of it hoarding to the extent that plants don't replenish like they're supposed to. Natural resources are just sucked up at a untenable rate. And so they're actually doing untenable action, but their singular Vi score, our quarterly looks good, you know what I mean? And but not the quarterly for the species. The quarterly for the species looks crappy.
Yeah,
that needs to be also brought up in for business owners, and when they have those meetings and stuff with their people, they need to be thinking not in terms of just the company and whether or not that's being done right, but the higher perspective, which is globally speaking. How is the species doing? How is this benefiting the species? How is this not benefiting the species? And let's think in terms of those terms, not just.
And even when you do get more specific, to bring it back to Bruno's original, I think when the record labels totally extract all the creativity from the artist, such that it oppresses the want of new artists to rise up and use their creativity, because
they're shooting themselves in the foot, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, the reason why they liked the artists in the first place was because of the fact that they were able to do their thing in their own way. But then they started to try and take control of it in this unhealthy way, and then it made it wrong for everybody.
And that directly brings us back to the Nijez, who happen to be on that higher SS index.
So
You
it
know,
happens a lot to them for sure.
Yeah.
Bruno, one thing I've noticed, I don't know if you have, is that Mitchell hasn't said anything for a while. You wanna see what's going on with him?
Jump in, Mitchell! Put you on the
Anything on me
spot!
for?
Are you doing your homework?
Mitchell, the teacher's calling you out of class.
Sorry, I brought my phone to class. Sorry, I was talking with Gabe about something kind of important related to what we were talking about earlier. But
For sure. Do you need
sorry, I can respond. What was it?
Okay. So, all right. So, what do you think about the fact that we see so many Vijay and Jai V, high-level female artists, and so many Vaiji male heads of companies in music, and the way that it sort of fits into this conversation about unhealthy ownership of Nye and me and on down.
About, sorry, what was the last bit?
How it fits into this whole conversation of unhealthy ownership of Nye, me.
Well, actually, again, I have to make sure we get clear. It's not a conversation about unhealthy buy. It's ownership. It's a conversation about buy ownership.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and the way it could be unhealthy. Yeah.
Right.
Well, as far as the prevalence of Vijay and Jai V, that might not just be because of our society. Maybe they actually just do have really good gifts that allow them to be pop stars and stuff like that. And
They
that people
absolutely do. I mean,
Just
without
appreciate-
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're well aware the interpretives are also very well presented in music and do a very creative job. Now, they obviously, the Naiji are also quite prevalent, but often, even with a lot of the Naiji that are most prevalent, there tends to be a very heavy emphasis on V with them, too, like a lot of the rappers and stuff. The ones that are popular, especially. Maybe not all of them, but certainly a lot. And so that could be related to the messages that the owners most want to propagate as far as who's given the most time and airspace to do their
That's
music.
a
I don't know
very
the
good
details.
point. That's
Yeah.
a great point, because Vaiji are also heavily in, for example, like big business, big major producers in the world, generating a artistic appetite in people for stuff.
Yeah.
Art that promotes stuff. That's great because they have a lot of stuff to sell you.
Yeah, and definitely Vijay and Jai V are a good thing to are good mojos to kind of tag that onto, because they're going to be wearing it in a stylish way that makes people want to live a certain way. And a lot of it is obviously quite immature and overly materialistic.
Right. You have the Naiji. You have the Naiji.
And even the Naiji, yeah, with a lot of them that with the over V.
You have the Naiji as like the person, like the liaison or something, I don't know. And then you have the Jiva or the Vijay and all these other, mojos to sort of like look at the Naiji's like, look at all this stuff that I got. Look at these Vijay that I have with all this stuff that I got.
But
Yeah,
clearly
I
other
think
mojos
Naiji
are capable of being very successful. So like you have Nijai every once in a while where they just get so good, it's so popular, you can't stop them. They're going to spread their message of that's probably usually not as materialistic.
And not the Nijai females can't do it, but we've definitely a bunch of Nijai males who are producers that actually make stuff come together. More on the ground level, the more like old money's the Vaiji, obviously, but like a lot like the making new groups, new sounds, new songs, and collaborations. Nijai are really strong on that.
What are your thoughts, though, is anyone on the exploitation of the Vijay or the Nijai or the Jai V, Jai Ni on that power, that obvious power imbalance?
That's obviously there. I think there is a little bit of like exploitation.
Like
I think to get into that though.
Like because a lot of this has to do with like like how much they're getting paid. So perhaps like discrediting how much making music is really worth, especially when you're not famous yet.
Right. I think the Star was probably
I think I
referencing
can
too.
definitely see an imbalance there because just the high SS index powers in general don't get much credit from the world. So like even if you're in the business for music, it can be used as an excuse to pay someone less.
Sure.
Um,
I think that's totally true, Ben. I think what Stargell may have also referencing or alluding to was that if you were a Jai V or a V Jai, often you have to basically dial yourself up for the expectations.
yeah, you have
that
to fit their standards, fit their rules.
if they
keep
don't, then they
everything
won't
how
get to work at all.
And I think Adimas mentioned this too, like his relationship to his Baiji, higher ups, they wanted the work to be something stupid or work in a way that it wasn't supposed to, just because they had those standards.
Although I don't
that can totally limit the creative process.
I don't think that's an example of Baiji in general, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't want to say like all Baiji are like this, but like executives definitely can be like that.
It's actually more dangerous in this case, as far as being problematic, are actually Baiji that are not dialed into the greater good of productive harmony, but are really good at their jobs. They're not stupid at getting what they believe the bottom line is. They have one big error, which is their bottom line is defined incorrectly. But within their incorrect definition of winning, they're kicking ass and taking names. We've seen a lot of Baiji who just are running music companies at big, billion-dollar level.
They're winning by their definition.
By their incorrect definition, they are winning, but it is an incorrect definition.
Yeah, exactly.
The business world in a nutshell.
Yeah, one thing actually just kind of bringing more Nejez angle in this is that going off what Stargell was saying is that that is one advantage that the Nejez do seem to have over other artists, is that if they want to make a certain sound, they tend to be able to kind of just feed on the creative process itself more than other mojos can, and go without having the money, which gives them more freedom, and being creative about getting their message out. Those two abilities allow them to sidestep. Going where you're saying the AdSense, if they have more knowledge developed, they tend to have this. But without a good amount of knowledge development, the AdSense are more needing that push, that often Baiji mogul push. They need that to kind of do what they do. It's very dangerous to step off the Baiji reservation. They're not going to get that big push, that glam push. Nejez, they suffer for it a lot, but they are able to go off the glam route and do their own thing. If they can make it good enough and get it to the right people, they can get through. But the route won't be made for them. Generally, the route's pretty pre-set.
For the AdSense?
For music artists in general, in which the AdSense seem to be more okay.
Got you. Doing that. Yeah, I actually thought of like this one song like by Selena Gomez. That's pretty recent that like just embodies this. It's like I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, I think I know which one.
I heard on the radio.
I want to something for you. I want to
look good for you.
Yes,
it's
yes.
It's like the song about how she's just talking about how she's glamorous and she can make people jealous of all the things she wears and how she looks. I mean, that's basically the message of the song. And you know what? Maybe to some degree it's not wrong for AdSense to be stylish and swagger about that a little bit, but it's a perfect way for Baiji to kind of. That's not a message they mind getting out there.
No, it's great for merchandising.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a very profitable market.
And there's like an IG in the song too, who's kind of beat up, and he talks about how he agrees with what she's saying and stuff.
A lot of the Nejez, on the other hand, do their pathway is an entirely different thing. Both the Naiji and the Nijai often will say something like, "I work for the art. I live for the art. I live for the music, and the heck with the money that goes along with it." And if they're good enough, that then the swell often brings them to the attention of the masses. But it happens by a much more circuitous route often.
Yeah.
Unless financially
it's
secure.
tough for sure.
But for certain mojos, and Nejez definitely like this, and you get certain things reward you more. Notoriety. Nejez like notoriety, both of them, the Naiji and the Nijai. So even if you're not being paid money, if your
That one.
music will get notoriety, you're like, it's worth it just for that. Just be known as that interesting, crazy person.
If you have your following at the bar that listens to your songs and they
They're
come
like, oh, it's that person. Yes, it is.
I don't really, we don't really care if we're living subsistence living because we have groupies, we have a crowd.
Yeah.
We're doing our thing loud and proud.
Yeah, the only money that I need is for being able to do the things that I want to do.
And a lot of times that's not that much. You can
Right.
do just if your thing is I want to make art or something, then like the technical financial stuff is much less requirement. If you're like I want to be a superstar, I want to be glam, then you're gonna need these cameras, you're gonna need these lights, you're gonna need this media push. That's big money, and then you're going to need a patron. And you need a patron, you just lost control. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah. Whereas, like I was saying, I believe I probably knew more than a few Naiji that started up their own bands and did it for the art, but also to have the crowd.
Control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People show up at their bar that they played at every Friday night so that they could be the big guy. Yeah.
Basically, they'll do anything where they get to live out being in a story. So
Yeah.
if they get to basically, I'm like living a story. If they can do that, they can live on pretty little if they're able to do this.
It's true. It's true.
Oh, by
Yeah.
the way, I'm currently being stunned by the profound depth of these lyrics that Mitchell has posted for us.
Oh my God.
That was the song I was talking about. Yeah. You got
I
it.
have a very big affinity for those kind of guys too. I that's to me that's like one of the most attractive things about Naiji, that they have that they most people think of that as arrogant, but it's not like I don't think of that as arrogant. That's just like
Both of the Najez really do that. They kind of live natively with the Ni and the Nai. They live in a dreamy state, and if the dreamy state's going well, then they're going well. It doesn't take a lot of resource to keep the dreamy state going if you really push for it and you have friends that are down for that.
ramen noodles and hot dogs.
Unless the fuzz gets in the way.
Ramen noodles and hot dogs.
Yeah.
Oh, we got 10 minutes left. Bruno, is there another direction or other angle you want us to touch on this subject before we call for the night?
Sorry, I'm still laughing about the whole thing with Selena Gomez because I just get this picture almost like a if you think about what's that comic book, The Watchmen? You know The Watchmen, the comic book, Alan Moore. It almost seems like she'd be like a character from something like that, like, and it would say like Vijay Selena Gomez, like it'd be like Vijay would be like prominently featured.
Kind of like in a Guy Ritchie movie with she's a character. She's running through the streets, all of a sudden freeze frame, Vijay Selena Gomez.
Exactly, something like that. And or like there's like I'm thinking like there's like a 3D hologramic poster of her on the wall, like
Nice.
dressed in like extremely provocative lingerie and like just doing something. It's like almost like Blade Runner. It's like she's like this like virtual pinup, like a virtual pinup. Like you Vaiji can own your own. Or even an IG, this is.
By the way, he's again depicting a debauched Mojo future. This is not actually how Podler dreams it to be. But
No, absolutely not. Like this is supposed to scare people into not doing this.
Bruno loves to go into these what do you call that?
Dystopian.
Dystopian futures
Oh,
of
God.
Mojo.
I don't know why. Like I don't know. Maybe
You should write a book, a novel on that, like some artistic novel on dystopian Mojo future.
I do want to at some point make together like a multimedia, like a movie novel type thing with all these ideas. But it's gonna take a while.
You can make your own music for it too. But,
Yeah.
Nice.
It's gonna take a long time, but I don't know why. Like and then so the lyrics, and it's just like I want. It's just so ridiculous. Like I could I've checked out since you said that because
Just, this kind of stuff, Bruno, when you get it going, you don't have to do all of it. It just kind of feeds you, and you can make you want to write a song or to have other kind of artistic expression, just to kind of like bring a part of that world in your head into this world.
One thing I'm noticing with these lyrics is it's interesting is there's definitely the Jez Gather part of it where I feel like she has a desire to want to be liked, right? It's
Desired, liked.
Yeah, and
Like
but
approachable,
it's
and like people
Chased,
paying attention to her.
pursued.
chased, appreciate, and then she's also saying stuff like I'm everything that I'm like you would want, kind of thing, like trying to sell herself up in that kind of way. It's very interesting because obviously.
And also, this is one thing that the Jez Gathers can both do in different ways. The Nijai tends to be much more in an ideal way, but still, is that lots of people will find it desirable for my company. So you'll have to really bring your game, and you better treat me right and not ever forget about me or treat me bad because lots of people think I'm cool.
Oh my God, Coach, that's such a good insight because it's so true. I mean, to be totally honest and authentic, we have that thing where people do like I've had people stalk me from a grocery store, that kind of thing. So, so
The Jez Gathers do kind of bring out a interpersonal hunter, like Jim. Everyone's inner Jez hunter. Jez Gathers kind of stimulate that in people. And if you are a Jez hunter,
the hunters start. They track and then get laser focused. Their V goes.
There's a conversation for another day on what is the healthy and unhealthy use of that, because that's just a thing. I know a lot of people have very strong opinions about that. Jez Gatherers themselves have very strong opinions about the use of that energy that they have, liking that they have it or not liking it, or using it right and using it wrong, because it's there and it's very powerful.
Yeah, this is obviously going off on it, but it is a scary thing to not have control over the attention that you garner.
Right.
Really, the scary part of I'm joking about it, but the scary part of being stalked out to a parking lot from a grocery store is not all that pleasant a reality,
For sure. But then there's the other side of it, which is that it does actually draw a tremendous amount of networked resource to whatever the Jez Gather is into. So if it kind of goes over to a certain area, we talk about the Nijai males, for example, they can just connect stuff. It's a really cool thing, and people they find it easy to connect to them often, and so that's a huge asset that you can bring. So obviously there's issues with controlling how much people want to access you and so forth, but the ability to actually entice a lot of network access people want to do with you, that's a really cool power to have.
Yeah.
And that is just a power that needs to be understood and known how to be done correctly.
Natural law spoken, it's a thing, and apparently as humans we need to have it. We need to have a few people that they really excel at it.
Yeah. They have a talent in it.
But then there's the other side too of using it right. Now, this is actually a Nizai, but Jailene and I are talking today. The show Miss Fisher, which we really like, and the lead like usually is not actually a Nai Mojo. It's the Nizai. She's the main detective, but in there. She has a romance with this Nai Z, who's the actual constable. She's like a rich dilettante who likes to solve crimes because it's fun. And she's like this cool flapper girl, independent, very progressive, and she's awesome. And generally, me and Jailene are like, yeah, she rocks. But we have one quibble with her, is she sleeps around a lot and so forth, and we're totally fine with that too. She does her bohemian thing, and you're free spirit, and we're like, that's totally cool, you're allowed. But then she's been flirting with the Nai Z dude, and he's serious. And so he's kind of divorced his wife, and now he's been showing more and more interest in her, and so she's been enjoying it, and she likes him more than the others because he doesn't go with anyone else, and he's very serious and good at what he does. So now last season ended where basically she's still flirting after their flirting has gotten fairly serious flirting. And Jilene agreed, and I can tell you as a fellow hunter, like, wait a minute. It's one thing if, like, you don't know if I'm serious, but, like, you've been egging me on to be more serious, and I'm like, okay, you got my attention. She kept flirting with people. So at the very end, after doing some more heroic stuff, he makes a joke, you know, Nye Alpha style, of like, because they were gonna meet up, but she has to go up with her dad, who's like a loser, a troublemaker. So the Nye Z says, this is his hunter way. All hunters know what I'm talking about here. He's actually looking for some reassurance with this gatherer. He's like, oh, I thought I'd have to watch out for you, but I never thought it'd be from your dad. That's his way of, like, jokingly bring out, like, am I going to keep having to watch out for you being, like, flirty and not telling people who... Because even if she's not trying to be flirty, people just like her. She gets a lot of attention. But he's sort of like, you maybe should tell them no a little bit because, you know, we're being serious. So he kind of puts it out there. And then she said, oh, there's a whole wide world out there for you to be worried about besides my dad. And that's how the season ends. I was like, oh, Catherine, no. She gave him nothing to hold on to. That's where, like, I can gather as I want. I know our flirting's gotten rather serious, but I'm still going to roll. I'm going to roam as I roam.
So yeah, that's what's really bad. That's bad.
Poor Nazi. He's like, oh man.
And that's for the Nazez. That's why that hunter needs to crack that jai and say, that's not cool. And if you want to play that game, I'm not playing anymore.
Yeah, I think she might need that because actually the first time she even realized that she really liked him, because they've been flirting for a while and been escalating, but even though it's escalating, she was still sleeping around a bunch of other people, and they weren't. But then he started actually getting serious with this other person, and all of a sudden she realized, oh, I have feelings.
That jai to hit to her G is, I'm not playing that game. If you want me to pursue you, I won't play that game.
You're right.
Yeah. There's fairness issues.
The discernments are flipped there, but the actual the one element, I think is just universal to like hunters and gatherers, where the gatherers have the power to network.
Yeah.
And they're just going to get a lot of attention that way, and it does make the hunters go, man, that's really cool. There does need to be on both sides, like the hunters have to step out from their like, I only hunt here. Because that's how they're going to be normally. And the gatherers are like, you're going to have to stretch out of your hunting lanes a little bit. You know what I mean? And then so the hunters are saying things like, okay, I know you're going to gather and roam, but like I have to have some reassurances. You can't be like, I'm just going to knee it. I'm going to knee and be it. What happens, happens. Like, oh, come on. I'm a hunter. I need a little more assurance than that.
Yeah, totally.
There's definitely push and pull there.
Oh yeah, because it's that dance, that inspirational dance. That's the best thing. That's my best story. Like I could watch any movie with that.
For sure.
Any movie.
I'm sure that dynamic, Bruno, must come up a lot, I would think, with those Vaiji moguls and the Vijay, like, everyone wants them. And they both have power, the other doesn't. I'm sure sometimes it's healthy and bonus stacking. Other times, you know, stories, even inspirational stories, can be a little adversarial, particularly if civilization has got people confused. You know, because, like, sometimes the Vijay are like, me being desirable pretty much lets me do whatever I want. And the Vaiji are like, I own everything, so I get to do whatever I want. That's not really like a good dialogue.
No.
That's
You know that. Always have confidence in that. Natural law has been doing this for a long time, so it knows what it's doing. So if we just figure out what it's actually doing, we'll be all right.
How does that work though? Because I don't see enough 5G Vijay stories.
That's a good point. That's a good point. We have to leave for today, but that is a good point, is that for the Najez, you do get to see them on screen in music and other things together, where the Vajez, usually, obviously they're together a lot and even hook up a lot and are married and so forth, but the Vijay tend to be the entertainers and the Vaiji tend to be behind the scenes. So you don't, I'd like to see more reality shows where we could see their dance.
Well, aren't there soap operas and stuff?
Oh, there are. Yeah, that's true. Although soap operas are debatable.
It's not real, but yeah. but you're right, it is on screen. That's a good point. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And now that's actually died off. So I think reality shows are going to take that place probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, and reality shows show a lot of Vijay males, which is interesting.
Yeah, because they're really a lot being relative, but like from nothing to something. You're right, Glenn. That was a big jump. He was like a ghost land for Vijay for a while. You couldn't find him nowhere.
Yeah, and it does show the storyline, but the problem with stuff, and even with reality shows where there are Vijay and Vijay, is they purposely make them over the top.
Indeed. And also, they have a very long cycle. Like, in movies have the shortest, like, romance cycle. You have, like, 2 hours to, like, meet, fall in love, have trouble, get back together. But, like, in, like, a sitcom, it's stretched. In soaps, man, it stretches for months and years, and that's, like, 5 days a week. It's like, whoa, how do you...
Like, holy shit.
How do you slice up the details of relationship motifs to be able to have that many things happen? That's crazy. But anyway, I want to leave it.
I guess they're not likely to get bored.
I want to make sure that since Bruno was the question, I'd like to kind of leave it with him if he has any kind of last words or thoughts, and then we'll go there.
No, I think you guys really summed it up. Yeah, thanks everyone for your input.
Cool. It's good, good inquiry.
Yeah.
Good entertaining discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Bruno. This was a great topic.
Alrighty, so we'll plan for next week to be Interpretives Temple. That should be fun. I'll try to get probably Ademus. Yeah, take lead. Oh yeah, that's good. Maybe Charlene. Yeah, I'll probably go Charlene and then Ademus. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If no one has anything else, then we'll call it for this evening. I'll see people on Sunday.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a
Good
good
night.
night,
Good
everyone.
discussion.
Bye.
Yeah, I talked about who's going to do next time. Cool. All right. Bye-bye.